Coming up on Wrestling Life.
He didn't recognize me at first, so it was kind of like, phew, okay, that's good. But then 5 minutes later, when he drags me in the office and like starts dressing me down, is that you motherfucker, Jonathan, all this kind of shit. It was actually a lot better than I thought, because I was really relieved then. I was just like, oh my God, he does remember me. So now the ball was in my court to actually prove to him that I was worthy of being there.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Hello and welcome, my friends, to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal. It's great to have you with us for what promises to be an awesome conversation today. Joining me in the studio is one of British wrestling's most influential and innovative talents. A true veteran of the game, my guest has plied his trade globally for 30 years, including Ring of Honor, Combat Zone Wrestling, TNA, across Japan and the Middle East, and of course here in the UK as one of the biggest names in the FWA and One Pro Wrestling. Having recently published his unexpected professional wrestling journey in book form, my guest has a tremendous story to share today. Joining me on Wrestling Life is, of course, the one, the only, the wonder kid. It is Mr. Jonny Storm. Johnny, good to have you with me today. How are you?
I'm okay, mate. I can't beat that introduction. Jesus. Hello.
So I'm admiring the dedication, sitting here freezing cold to have this conversation in a van. I love this. That's Wrestling Life right there.
Paying my dues, kid.
So look, 30 years in the business, still competing. Why was now the right time to release your wonderful autobiography, which has kept me really entertained over the last couple of months reading this?
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that. Well, it was actually, I started during COVID. So obviously the first year and a half or so of COVID, I was pretty ill, actually, believe it or not. But then as we were going in and out of lockdowns and stuff like that, and I knew it was just something I always wanted to do for myself, you know, just to have it there. So it's something to look back on when I do retire. And it just coincided when I was coming towards the end of writing the book that it was my 30th year in professional wrestling. So it was just all the stars aligned, you know, like they say, and it just all come together and it worked out perfectly.
I mean, it is an absolutely insane journey you've been on. I mean, you know, this show's called Wrestling Life, and you really have lived a wrestling life, my friend. I mean, how was it for you to kind of relive the ups and downs of your wrestling journey in book form? Because it's quite a very personal thing to do, isn't it?
I was talking to someone about this the other day. You know, when people buy like a T-shirt or a picture from the wrestlers, which you very much appreciate, a book is definitely a more personal thing. And I've never written a book before or anything like that. Probably the last writing I did was back at school all them years ago. So I didn't know how it was going to be. And this was why I was so desperate to get feedback from people once it was released, what it was like. Because literally I had no clue. I was laughing when I was writing a lot of it. And it could be a slog at times as well. But I just knew when I dedicated myself to it, like sort of full time in the last sort of year and a half, I thought it was really good, and I knew I had some good stories to tell, but whether people would respond to that or not was a different story. And touch wood, so far so good, because people seem to be loving it. But I refuse to believe everybody loves it. There's got to be some haters out there, because this is the world we live in, right?
There's always haters, but I mean, it's a fun story, Johnny. And what I didn't realize, you know, going right back to the beginning of your wrestling life, I had no idea like what a huge fan you were before you became a talent. Like, I was stunned by how involved you were with the business at a very young age. I mean, you and I are very similar ages, and I got into wrestling early 90s, and hearing your stories of what you were doing in 1994 and 1995, I mean, you were literally living my dream of what I'd love to have been doing then. Tell me about your early encounters with the WWF, and especially how the nickname Little Razor came about.
Oh, you're pulling the Little Razor out already.
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes in. Like any fan, I was desperate for my WWF fix at that time, and it was quite rare that they were coming over. They were just starting to at the end of, I think it was 89 was the first ever tour, and I missed it, unfortunately. But from 90 onwards, I sort of cottoned on that they come over here once a year or whatever it was on tour, and I had to be there. You know, I was just a huge wrestling fan, and to get my fix of wrestling, I go to British shows as well. In the meantime, till WWF came back, and I was always just such a big fan. You know, I'd want to meet the wrestlers, talk to the wrestlers, interact with them any way I could at British shows as well. You know, we'd wait around the back afterwards and get autographs from the guys like, you know, Robbie Brookside or Ricky Knight, people like that, proper like legends of our sport in this country. And the same just applied for the Americans. Like, I had no idea how you can get round the back of Wembley Arena to meet the guys. Back in those days, it was literally a case of we waited outside as the coach pulls in. You get like a little wave or something from a few of the wrestlers on the bus, and then that's it. And it just so happened I met some people there who were friends with a couple of the wrestlers somehow, and they knew which hotels they were staying at. So just through becoming friends with them and jumping on their coattails, I'd go with them to the hotels like after the shows and hang out in the lounge just to get like autographs and pictures of the wrestlers as they came in. It blew my mind as a young kid to actually meet these heroes of mine. It was a completely different world. And jumping on a little bit, I did it so much. I become to know a lot of the wrestlers, like because I was just always there. Anytime they were in the country, I was there, whether it be down south or up north, even abroad. A couple of times I went to Germany, as you'll read in the book. But they come to know me by my name. Well, I got christened the name Little Razor by a few of the guys because Scott Hall was my favourite wrestler at the time. And I just dressed head to toe in like Razor Ramon merchandise. Like I had his shorts with his little Razor sign. I had the Razor t-shirt, of course. I made up a waist jacket and painted it with the Razor logos and everything on, which I'd wear. I'd grease up my hair and have the little curl at the front and everything, just to like get their attention or get his attention as he walked through the lobby when they're on the way to the show or something, just to get a picture or something like that. And a few of the boys took to it. And from going so much, they just named me Little Razor. And from then on out, that's who I was. So much piss taking of everybody.
It's amazing. And like you were there, like talking of Razor and what an incredible talent Scott Hall was. I mean, you were there in the 4th row at WrestleMania 10. I mean, one of my favorite shows of all time. How much did that show, and particularly the ladder match, kind of influence your future wrestling life as a performer?
Well, to be honest, like at that time, I never really dreamed I could be a wrestler. I was just a huge fan. And it never really crossed my mind, because it's not like nowadays where there's a school everywhere all throughout the world. There were next to no schools, or in my mind then there was like 0 schools, and there was very, very few. So it didn't even cross my mind that I was going to be a wrestler. I was just there as a huge fan, taking it all in. And if you watch the WrestleMania 10 DVD, I'm actually on it. That's awesome. As I explain in the Unofficial Legend. And I won't tell you where, though, because you can buy my book, find out where I am, and then go watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We won't give too much away. But as well as Little Razor, there was another kind of WWE legend that you emulated as a young fan, and that was Double J. Now, in the book, you kind of fast forward years later to actually being in TNA and working as a talent. And Jeff kind of doing a bit of a double take. Take me back to kind of what that was like, kind of reliving that moment with Jeff as an adult and as a performer. Yeah,
I was worried, to be honest with you, what the reaction would be, whether he just think I'm this fan who like shouldn't be there more than anything. And when I did actually get to see Jeff, he didn't recognize me at first. So it was kind of like, okay, that's good. But then 5 minutes later, when he drags me in the office and like starts dressing me down, is that you motherfucker, Jonathan, all this kind of shit. It was actually a lot better than I thought, because I was really relieved then. I was just like, oh my God, he does remember me. So now the ball was in my court to actually prove to him that I was worthy of being there. This was very, very early TNA, when it was weekly pay-per-views, which I'm sure maybe not a lot of people remember. But it was definitely the number 2 alternative to WWE at the time, because TNA were really hot. You know, they had AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Kid Cash and Amazing Red putting on these phenomenal X Division matches at that time, which was grabbing the world attention. It was sort of, it was right in the middle of a period when the wrestling world was evolving a little bit more from the bigger guys to the more cruiserweight guys, shall we say, or more faster pace, a different style of wrestling. There would always be the big guys and the gimmicks and stuff, but people were being more receptive to the smaller guys like myself. So it was great timing to be there.
Yeah, I mean, amazing time for business. And I mean, of course, you know, you had a very big role to play in that kind of change of mindset with the work that you and Jody Fleisch were doing. And, you know, you two have been interlinked for decades now. When did that friendship with Jody first begin? And why do you feel the two of you always have had such incredible chemistry together in the ring?
We met at our training school when I was there probably about a year just before him, and when he come with his friend. And he was just a small, skinny guy like I was, but he could do a bit of flying. So the genius decision was taken to match us two together, mainly in tag matches, and just put the two little skinny kids flying all over the place in the ring together and just go from there. We had no psychology. We had no idea what we were doing, but we could move around, you know, and it was different to everything else on the show. So credit where credit's due, they put us two together, and it just sort of went from there. But when he left the school after a couple of years, I didn't see him again for maybe a year or so, or a year or two later after that. And then, because we were sort of friends in the school, but not like best friends like we are now. Do you know what I mean? We'd always get on and have fun and stuff like that, but it wasn't anything outside of the ring other than wrestling, you know? And it wasn't until, you know, years later that when we reconnected again through coincidence, that we really became best friends, and then just the rest is history, as they say.
Was there also a case of kind of competitive fire between the two of you? Like, because you are so well matched and so evenly matched in that ring, like you want to always go out and kind of steal the show. Is it a bit that you want to kind of one up one another and you're kind of pushing
Not really.
on?
I'll be honest with you. Like, no, we both had the same goal, to steal the show, and we know we needed each other to do that. So there's no point in me trying to one up him or him one up me, because then the chemistry doesn't work. Yeah. And I think a big part of it is that radiates to the fans is, you know, we have that relationship outside the ring as well, that we're so close and such good friends that you can sort of see in the ring how good it all unfolds, if you know what I mean, the connections there between each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, you know, the influence that you two have had is huge. And, you know, you've got in the book, like kind of fast forward in all these years on, you know, many of wrestling's kind of biggest names are now talking about what a big impact you two made on them. So one of the names, of course, is Will Ospreay, who talks in the book about how finding you and Jody were British inspired him and a whole generation. I mean, what does that mean to you to hear words like that from someone like Will? Yeah,
that was fantastic. For my money, Will is the best in the world. Do you know what I mean? And I had the honor of wrestling him a couple of times on his way up. And you could just tell, you know, when some people just, they get it, they've got the right look and they've got the ability. He was just honing his skills, and he's just gone on to become one of the best in the world. And I'm really, really proud of what he's done. And to hear stuff like that coming from him, like you say, is really reassuring, shall we say, and yeah, it makes me happy.
Must feel a bit like a full circle moment, like you go into this business as a fan and now you're actually influencing the next generation who are carrying it forward.
That's weird to me. Like, it's always been part of my life. Like you'll read in the book, I was such a young man when I got into wrestling, and literally all the way through to where we are now, it's been in my life, like the main thing in my life, nothing but wrestling. And yeah, I'm still doing the damn thing.
And are you still a fan? Like, can you still actually enjoy watching a wrestling show independent of, you know, being a performer and what you know about the business?
I don't watch it so much on TV. I watch like the main shows, like, you know, Royal Rumble or WrestleMania or something like that. But I enjoy it more being there live. So if I'm done with my match at a show, here in the UK or abroad or wherever, I'll go out and sit and watch the rest of the show just to see if I'm still up to standard.
Well, another guy I've got to talk about, obviously, that you were very closely associated with throughout your career, because the three of you really were kind of the pioneers of this new style of British wrestling, is Doug Williams, who in my mind is one of the best of all time. I mean, you and Jody really revolutionized this business. What can you tell me about Doug as a worker and as a friend?
Oh, he's just a fantastic human being. He's someone I aspired to when I was coming through, because he was in maybe a year or two just before me. And again, none of us knew really what we were doing. We just sort of found our way. And as the years went by and the more and more Dougie got out onto the international scene, we always looked up to him. But when he started representing Britain abroad after so many years, because there wasn't so many British wrestlers who were doing that at that time, he was just like a hero to us, and he set the standard. Funny story, when I sent him a copy of my book, I wrote in it, thank you for setting the standard for us British wrestlers to follow, because that was truly heartfelt to how I feel about him, and I hope the fans do as well, because yeah, he's the epitome of what a British wrestler should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. A match I've got to ask you about, well, a series of matches really, but I mean, the match you had with AJ Styles at British Uprising was an instant classic. And then obviously you follow that on later on with facing him again for the NWA title in Helsinki. I mean, you two had, just incredible synergy together. How did you feel going into that kind of British Uprising show, which was such a huge spotlight on the scene at the time?
Well, to be honest, AJ wasn't the huge name that he is now. He was starting to make waves on the independent scene in America. But of course, this is very early internet days. Yeah. So we sort of knew of him we knew the name just through word of mouth from wrestlers within the business and stuff like that. So the FWA, what they did best was they bring in these unsigned stars from America or Japan, wherever it may be, and bring them over to England to showcase not just them to our fans, but just to think of Mike Tyson gave the rub to Shawn Michaels in their WrestleMania match. Yeah. It was one of those moments for me. I sort of got a rub from being in there with the Americans when they come over. And obviously AJ, he's one of the absolute best in the world, in my opinion. And it was just pure brilliant booking on the FWA part to get him over into the country, and the other people, like Samoa Joe and all the others that followed, and put me on with him. And again, it was just one of those things where you just click so well with someone in the ring. It's magic, I'd never met the guy before until that day, and we wrestled that night and we produced something special. That's the magic of wrestling.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you and AJ just haven't aged. I don't know what you two are doing, but you're just turning back the hands of time. I love it.
Trying, man, trying.
Another name that I mean, there's some fascinating names that crop up on your journey, and as I say, I can't recommend this book enough because it is such a fascinating journey of all the people you meet along the weird and wonderful world of wrestling. Another name is Jerry Lynn, who I think is such a tremendous worker and so overlooked in his place in the industry. I mean, you wrestle him countless times. You beat him for the XWF's first European Championship, but much more than that, you two become really great friends. Tell me about Jerry, but also how you managed to evolve his musical taste whilst getting to know Jerry Lynn.
Well, he was big in ECW, which was the only sort of independent alternative at that time, again, back in the day. And again, he was another one that the FWA brought over because, he had a bit of a name in America, and introduce him to our fans and give us the rub being British guys. And he was just a lovely person, just such a nice guy. He's a metalhead, he likes his metal music and all that kind of stuff. And I'm obviously pop star Johnny, boy band member number 5 of every single boy band that there is. And we sometimes personalities like that, opposites attract and everything. And it's another one of those ones like Jody where we got on so well outside the ring. It was just connection in the ring, you know. It translates through. I can't really say what it is. We became great friends, and our matches, in my opinion, were some of the best matches around at that time, because our styles were just perfect for each other, you know. Whether it was in America or England, we could always have an absolute cracker of a match, and the fans would be responsive and receptive to it no matter where we were in the world. It's just one of those things that happen. And I'd stay with Jerry when I went to TNA, because he was living in Nashville at that time, which was where it was being filmed at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And he was living with Jeremy Borash, who turned out to be a really, really big influence behind the scenes in TNA back then, and now WWE, I believe. And we play games. We play like GTA Vice City, I remember, was our game of choice back in the day, which was tremendous. And on the radios, where you can drive around town, you can choose your radio station. I'd always put it on pop, and he'd get the hump with me about it, because he'd want like the crazy death thrash metal bang your head, you know, that stuff. And we bonded most on the Human League, believe it or not, which is not necessarily pop. It's more synth. Yeah. Synth, as they call it. And it just seemed this song would be on every single time I'd be driving the car, and it just got stuck in our heads. It was Fascination by the Human League. And there's a line in it. And so the conversation turned until the sun went down. And every time we'd see each other, we'd just like go into that deep Human League voice and sing it to each other. And so the conversation turned. Jerry, how you doing, mate? You all right? And he got into his Human League off that, and also a bit of the Black Eyed Peas as well, which he writes a great story about in the book, which I won't spoil for you because it's fun. The whole point of these people being in the book is I want people to read it, and then they're all of a sudden like this famous wrestler that everybody knows will just pop up with like a whole thing in it, and that I just want the reader to be like, oh damn, like he's in it, oh damn, she's in it. Like that's exactly what I wanted. So I didn't want to say too much about that sort of side of it. All I did was to get these quotes, by the way, or these stories, I just message them, some of them after many years of not seeing each other, and just say, I'm writing my book, write whatever you want. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to change it, edit it or anything like that. And I'll just whack it in. And everything you read in that book from everyone who's wrote it is all true. And it's exactly what they said. And I'm proud of it, you know.
It really adds to the story. And also what's lovely about it, it really does show, I mean, that's definitely been my experience of wrestling. You never know who you're going to bump into in any kind of wacky environment. Some of the kind of experiences I've had with wrestlers who are like, you know, I was a huge fan of as a kid, and then I've had these like crazy moments just in normal life with, like, you just never really know who's going to pop up in this business and where you're going to find them. And it's great. And I love all the little moments that are in there. I've got to ask you about boy bands, because that is something you and I have in common. Like when I kind of moved in with my now wife and we merged CD collections, she was the one bringing like Korn and Slipknot and all that kind of stuff. I was the one bringing Steps and Hearsay into the house.
There you go.
So I'm right there with you. I mean, for me as a kid, it was all about E17, and then last year I had my 40th birthday, and I was there at the Take That concert. If I had to put you on the spot right now, greatest boy band of all time?
For me, Take That. But Boyzone are up there. Five are up there. I just got back from
underrated.
What's that?
Five are underrated.
Massive. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I done some tunes, man. For a long time, I'd use Everybody Get Up, Five on the holiday camps.
Yeah.
And later on in FWA, I did a rip-off version of that with my vocals over the top, but changing the lyrics and stuff, which was a pretty fun thing. You can find that version on there was an FWA CD of the wrestlers' music back in the day. Yeah, I've got it somewhere. But that was pretty cool. But Hearsay, mate, I had the Hearsay poster up in the All-Star van on my first ever tour, and I got some shit for that, believe me.
Oh, man. No, it's not fair. They were great.
But I just did a Butlins Weekender a few months ago, and it was a replay weekend. So they had like E17, Atomic Kitten, all those like bands from our growing up and stuff. It was tremendous. Of course, it wasn't any of the original members of E17.
No.
It's Artful Dodger as the main singer, and then just two dudes back in dancing.
Just my name. I love that.
Yeah, E17. I don't think they're allowed to be called E17 because of the copyrights. It's E17, but
I see.
They were smashing it out, which is cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you still enjoy doing the holiday camps?
Yeah, as and when. I don't do it so much now. I don't think a lot of them have it now. Like some do, but a lot of the major ones have stopped, like Pontins and Haven, I don't believe do it anymore. Butlins have just started doing it again maybe a year or so ago. It's ups and downs with the holiday camps. It's always been like that. Again, going back to the book, there's a story about there wasn't any wrestling at Pontins for many years, and we went in and done the showcase event in front of all like the bigwigs at one of their major flag parks to see if we could get the contract for it. And I can't remember what year it was, but we actually won the contract back, which got it back onto Pontins for a good few years. So that was a big thing for me. It's all about the team on the camps, you know. The wrestling is probably secondary. You know, if you got a good team with you, you can have some of the best times of your life on the camps. And I tell a good few stories in the book about some of the shenanigans that we got up to.
Yeah, absolutely.
With some pictures as well.
Yes, and I guess also the other thing about holiday camps is, like, I know people are there, they're having fun, but they're not there for the wrestling. A lot of people you're performing in front of have never seen you. They may have never even seen a wrestling match. So your challenge there is to try and win over an audience that's possibly not even on board. Like, you talk in a book about, like, you're there sometimes like almost by a swimming pool, like people are trying to relax, and there you are. So it's quite a challenge as a performer, isn't it, to kind of win over that audience who aren't necessarily...
Yeah, 100%. They're not wrestling fans, and if we can make fans out of these people because they get a free show out of it, do you know what I mean? So they've got nothing to lose, and it's in the afternoon as well. Maybe that will translate to them coming to town shows when they're back in their homes and stuff like that, which obviously will help British wrestling come up and up more.
Yeah, I've heard an old anecdote from William Regal about how he used to say that you're not performing for the wrestling fans at shows, you're performing for the wives or the mothers or the sisters or whoever's been dragged along by a fan. And if you can win them over, then you're doing your job right.
100%. And it's also a good place to test out stuff, if you know what I mean, because they're not going to be critical of you like potentially a wrestling fan would be. So you can try things and see what works in front of a different audience. Yeah.
Another friendship that absolutely fascinated me, which I would not have seen coming, was your friendship with Bill Apter. Where does that come from, and how does that relationship blossom over years? I know you talk about it in the book, but for anyone that hasn't read it yet, it's amazing.
Again, it was the FWA bringing him over to do some stuff on a show.
What was he doing? What was he just interviewing people? I
guess, like, it was early internet. So obviously before that, Bill was a huge name in the magazine world, the editor for Pro Wrestling Illustrated and The Wrestler, all those magazines, which I used to read as a kid and religiously, although 99% of it was probably bollocks. he wrote all of that, but
it seemed legit, didn't it? On a diet of, we were reading WWF magazine, and then you read PWI, and you'd be like, "Wow, this is like the proper, like the broadsheet version of the WWF magazine, like the rankings and everything."
Yeah, exactly. Really. And you'd hear about people you'd never heard of. Like, I was just WWF tunnel vision, you know, but that sort of, they dabbled in a little bit of stuff outside that, which opened my mind up a little bit back then. But I'd always hear the name Bill Apter or see the name Bill Apter in the magazine. So when he come over, I was just like a fanboy again back at the hotels with, you know, little Razor came out of me again when I'd see something like that. And we just hit it off as friends. And he's such a genuine person. Again, like, it's amazing because he was a lot older than me, and he's a lot older than me now. He's got older, not younger. But he just a genuine, beautiful person who would do anything for anyone. And he took care of me so well when I was in America. And it just was amazing, like completely different ends of the spectrum, like me as the younger wrestler and him as like the older, knowledgeable editor and chief of wrestling magazines. But he sort of took me under his wing in a way and would do whatever he could to help out my career. And for that, I can't thank him enough, because he's a brilliant person, and he did a lot for me when I was in the States, and that is something I'll never forget. And he's someone I had to get in my book, because we had some real great times with Bill. Just ask him about his world's fastest figure four leg lock, and he'll give you a few stories about that.
Well, I mean, I saw him very briefly in Philly last year over WrestleCon, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I could just see his energy. He was like moving from one person to the next to the next.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone's just flocking around him because he's Bill Apter. And the funny thing about wrestling, I think, these days is, I mean, it is just like everyone who's in the business was a fan first, weren't they? So they're like you and I. They grew up on the same magazines, they grew up on the same matches, and I think everyone just has so much respect for him and what he's given to business for so long, because what we talking like 50 years now. I mean,
he's still going strong as well. You know, he does his podcast. He wrote his book, Is Wrestling Fixed? I think it's called. Someone brought me a copy of it, right, and wanted me to sign it. So underneath on the inlay, it's obviously the title of the book. It says, Is Wrestling Fixed? I just put yes, apostrophe, Jonny Storm. So I hope one day he'll see that.
He'll find that. I love that. Couple more questions before we wrap today. And so I want to have you back on again at some point after everyone's read your book, because there's loads more I want to ask you. But time constraints today. I want to ask about more recent years doing these shows over in the Middle East, because it's been fascinating to see, like, I guess, I mean, you've been there with like many of kind of wrestling's biggest all-time legends. It certainly seemed like there was a period in the late kind of 2010s where these shows would fly in anyone of name value for, like, you talk about like Sting flying all the way to the other side of the world to do like a 3-minute promo. It's like they're flying everyone in for a period, but also you're wrestling in like these mega stadiums. It definitely seems like that part of the world has really embraced wrestling in recent years, especially obviously the Riyadh partnership with WWE. What was it like for you to compete in such a different environment? Because you've worked there a lot now, haven't you?
Yeah, meant to be going back again this year as well. They got a huge show coming up with like Mick Foley, Atani, Nick Nemeth, all those sort of guys. So again, it's going to be a massive super show. It was eye-opening, like the first time I went, because who would have thought, you know, you go to Qatar in your life for like a holiday or something. I get it's more known now, shall we say, because of the World Cup and stuff. And it's a developing country to a certain extent. Like, they've got a ton of money, and you walk through the city and there's like these beautiful like 6-star hotels and buildings, but then on the other side there might be just like sand desert and stuff that it's just ripe for development. Do you know what I mean? It's not I don't mean it's developing as in it's a third world country or anything. It's just it's constantly being built on. There's constant construction going on there. I don't think I've been there one time where there isn't like work going on something. They're building and building and building, and it's a fascinating place. Qatar especially, because when I was researching for the book, it only there's only 2 million people in the whole of the country.
Wow.
Which is not a lot, really, when you think about it. England's 60 million, something like that. Yeah. And they really take care of their own in Qatar. The Qatari people are really looked after by their governments and stuff. When I talk to the boss who runs QPW, Ali Marafi, he tells me all this stuff, and it just blows my mind what they do for their citizens. And it's great. We could learn a lot from that, I think. But yeah, again, it's another one of those things where you meet people and they're just so nice and genuine, and maybe not like you ever thought they would be. Just someone from the complete opposite side of the spectrum to where you're from. Yeah. And you just gel instantly over wrestling, number one. And then as the friendship develops, other things like Ali's a big football fan, and obviously so am I. So we gel a lot and argue a lot over stuff like that, which is always fun. And he's a chairman, or his co-partner, a guy called Bilal, who's actually German but lives in Qatar. I've done a lot of wrestling in Germany, and I know a few choice German words, shall we say. So I always use the opportunity to use these choice German words whenever I see Mr. Bilal come around, which I will be doing this year when I see him as well. I've got a few new ones for him, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you tell some incredible stories in the book, not least kind of some escapades of Al Snow. And him getting caught in some tricky situations out there. So I'm not going to spoil it now. All I will say
another amazing gentleman. Love Al Snow. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Humble, genuine. You think what these guys have done in wrestling and to be that way with me, who, I've done some stuff in wrestling, but, they could have been like, oh, who's this guy or whatever on my way up. But never. It was just instantly like you become friends like that with some people and you click with some people. And I think that's what happens in life, not just in wrestling. But I'm glad to say I've met so many people like that, and I'm really appreciative of it.
Yeah, I think people at heart want to help one another. I think people genuinely want to pay it forward and want to look out for one another, and good people help good people. And I had similar experience with Al. I met him last year, ended up spending the entire night with him and his, just in the bar with him and his wife, Jessica, who's just the nicest person in the world.
He's brilliant.
Al drunk me under a table. I cannot drink like Al Snow. He's a big man. And I realised that the next morning, but he's just the nicest guy in the world. And as you say, like you expect one thing of people. And my experience with wrestlers has always been you expect one thing and you always get the other. And I just invariably have fantastic experiences, which is why I love doing this show, because I always say don't meet your heroes, but actually when your heroes are wrestlers, it generally works out pretty well in my experience.
That's great to hear, and don't believe everything you read online, someone's opinion.
Don't read anything you read online. I think that's
it's true, like you got to form your own opinion, be yourself. I mean, you might not meet this person, but until you have actually met that person, how can you be like, oh, I don't like that guy? Something like that.
Well, that's the thing. We're just so quick to judge these days, aren't we? About everyone, make a snap decision about anyone on what we read. And me, that's why I love having conversations like this. 'Cause it's a chance for me to properly get to know people away from the personalities that you see on TV or read about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, last thing then today, where can people buy your book? Because it is everywhere and you've been doing a great job of promoting it. And also, how can my audience follow you on social media if they are not already doing so, Johnny? Plug away.
Right.
Get your merch table out.
Well, in England, www.jonnystorm.bigcartel.com. That's the ideal for me, if you can, because I can do signed versions through Big Cartel, and there's an option to get signed books on that. Plus, I get a little bit more money out of it. You can also get it via Amazon, which is there's a whole long numbers and letters thing that goes along with it. But I'm sure if you search on Amazon, The Unofficial Legend by Jonny Storm, it should come up in whatever country you're in. But Amazon produce all that. So they obviously take a big cut out of it. So I only get a little cut out of the Amazon ones. But I've done it especially for international Amazon mainly, because it's easier to do rather than me having to ship books to Japan or the Middle East or wherever. Do you know what I mean? So if you're from this country, please get it from my Big Cartel if you can. And I ship out those books personally myself, because I have a lot in my house, which I take to shows and obviously sell on the merchandise table there. So it'll personally be signed by me. It'll personally be shipped by me. And I'll put a little kiss in there as well, if that's what you want. Other than that, I've been trying to promote it. I'm not really a big internet person, to be honest with you. I promote all my shows and stuff like that because I believe it's part of your job to promote shows, and as much as you can, sharing and liking things, and even of shows I'm not even on, it should all be part of helping get British wrestling out there. But I've been doing these things lately called wrestling reading. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
I've been whatever show I've been on, I've been getting a few of the wrestlers in the ring before the show and asking them to do whatever move they want to me while either they're reading the book or I'm reading the book. And I stole from an old Cadbury's cream egg advert from years ago. It was, how do you eat yours? I put, how do you read yours? So I'm trying to get that out there a little bit. And I'd like the fans to do it as well. So if you've got any fans who have got my book, show me how you read yours. And I don't want to embarrass the man, but a man me and you know pretty well, we spoke about earlier, Mr. Doug Williams is in the lead right now. I'm sure you probably saw it.
I haven't seen Doug. So
you haven't seen the Doug Williams?
I'm going straight.
You want me to spoil it for you?
Please, go
on. He took a picture of himself reading the book on the toilet.
Oh, that's nice.
Full 100% shot, trousers down on the bog. He must have set up the camera like it. It probably took some doing, like, the man, Dougie, for that one, but he's in the league with how he reads his unofficial legend on the toilet. So if anyone out there has got
the ambassador of British wrestling right there, isn't it? And also, I don't think there's any greater compliment than toilet reading.
Exactly. I say to people, if you don't get time, just read it on the toilet, leave it in the toilet. So exactly. It's a big old book. It's just over 300 pages. It's a heavy fucker. You can see yourself, right? It's a big old boy.
Weighty book, but it's good fun. I really enjoyed it. And I recommend it a lot. What about socials, Johnny? Where are you on the socials?
Jonny Storm. I've got Wonder Kid Jonny Storm on Instagram. Wonder Kid Johnny on Twitter. X, and on Facebook, JonnyStorm.56, I believe. I wasn't born in 1956 before you say it. It's just what Facebook's given me for some unknown reason. But the main one is get on that www.JonnyStormBigCartel.com site, and all my merch is on there and stuff like that. If you'd like anything else while you're there, you are more than welcome.
Good stuff. We'll be going in the show notes, Johnny. Just before we wrap up, a couple of thanks. So always I thank my producer, Jeff Easton. He's the mastermind behind this production. It always pops up here when I say his name. He brings wrestling life to life so beautifully. Thanks for all my audience who have checked out this great conversation today. Like, subscribe, do all that lovely stuff to keep us moving forward. But most of all, thank you to the Wonder Kid, Jonny Storm, for a wonderful conversation today.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone. I'll be back soon.
Absolutely. So we'll be back for more real talk from real talent. But until then, be good to each other. Show us some love on socials. Pay it forward if you can. I'll see you soon. Bye.